All right. Hey guys, Etowah County. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this. If you are seeing this right now, later on down the road, we're going to follow the similar format that we have done with all the candidate interviews. We've got Mr. Andrew Jones here, and we're going to step through. He has answered questions. His answers are posted on the website, advancedetowah.com. Go to election 22. You can get over on the app and learn more about him. But we're going to step through a little bit about the rendering plant and some of the stuff that he did. But really, we want to dive into discussions on his thoughts of the future of Etowah and some of the core foundational issues that we're dealing with. So, if that's something you're interested in, I'm going to start a 4-minute clock, and if you want to skip on, then go ahead and do that. Otherwise, we're gonna sit here and chat and wait for folks to jump on. So let me get that 4-minute clock going. There we go. Let's see. We got a few of you, so please, if you wouldn't mind, first and foremost, let me know that you can hear me, that everything seems to be working all right, and hit that share button. I'm going to roll over. So how are you doing today, Mr. Jones?
Doing good, Michael. It's good to be with you, and looking forward to our chat.
Yeah. All right. So we are, yep, we're live on there. I'm going to have to check my own audio, so bear with me for just a second. Yep. All right, good. Everything's working. Guys, again, please hit that share button. And if you do have questions, then by all means, drop them in the comments, and we'll try and cover them. So we just finished up Easter weekend. I've seen some video clips of you hammering away on the old tickling the old ivories. Is that something you've been doing most of your life?
Long time. It's actually a fun hobby of mine. I actually majored in music in undergrad. A lot of people don't know that. Then I went on to grad school and did public policy. So I kind of got more in the political realm in grad school. But took piano lessons from the third grade all the way through college, and it's just a good way to blow off steam and relax and do something different than what I usually do throughout the day.
Wow. So majored in music. So I guess that's for a lot of folks, it's similar to guys like me with a history degree. What other stuff can you do with a history degree
Right.
than go be a lawyer, go be a professor, or get into politics, I suppose. Or for me, join the military where nobody cares what your degree is. So,
Right.
yeah. All right. Well, again, guys, welcome. We are going to step through the discussions that we have been having. I want to just remind everybody, the kind of the tone of the discussion we're having is about business development, business growth. How do we grow the quality of life in our community? There are tons and tons and tons of issues that we could talk about. And if there's stuff that's really specific to you, that you're passionate about and you want to talk to Andrew about, I certainly encourage you. Not hard to find him on the internet. Reach out to him. And we've got all that linked up on our website at advancedetowah.com. You can go find links for him and all the other candidates that are running. So, that's, again, the whole encouragement is go get to know about these candidates, learn about the issues that we're dealing with. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to figure out where you can find them, how you can get in touch with them, where you can find public things that they've done, and learn as much as you can. But ultimately, really kind of sitting down or calling and emailing back and forth is probably the best way to really kind of get to know you guys. So I'm one that I've said over and over again, I was probably not paying nearly enough attention the rendering plant came along and scared the tar out of me, and has really kind of put me in a position where I got to wake up and learn more. So here we are. So the timer is done. We are going to jump on in, and welcome. Well, let's see. It's not going to cooperate for me. Sorry, technical glitch there. All right. Welcome, guys, again. Thank you for coming. Senator Jones, running for reelection on your seat, unopposed now. You're going to get to sit through the primaries and invest some time in some other things. But obviously still, and thank you for taking the time and coming on and still talking to voters and constituents and educating them on what your thoughts are on issues, because you're not just dropping the pack just because you're unopposed. As we get rolling, I just want to I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it for when we jump into talking about the rendering plant. So let's start off with, can you just tell me, outside of the politics world, we already talked about, you got a music degree. Who is Andrew Jones, outside of politics? Just the quick, minute and a half version of who you are. So,
well, kind of got a unique background, kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. I like to joke, but grew up on a farm in Cherokee County. Went off to college in Kentucky, grad school in Virginia. Spent some time doing a teaching exchange program overseas in Japan and South Korea. Came back, started a coffee roasting business. We roast, package, deliver, and sell online. I deliver to supermarkets wholesale. We sell online. Deep South Coffee Factory is the name of that company. Craft coffee roasting business.
Okay.
Do that. Also involved in our family farm. We raise beef cattle. Used to be a dairy farm, and I'd seen firsthand, being involved in agriculture and in business, how a lot of times government just makes things worse instead of makes things better. For just small businessmen, small family farmers. Had always had an interest in politics. Had always wanted to get involved, and just felt like 2018 was the time to do that. Felt like it was a kind of a change election year that has borne out as we've seen massive change electorally all over Etowah County, for example. So jumped in and thought I could bring my unique background and experiences to the Alabama legislature.
Okay. Well, cool. That's I guess for the next part, we'd say we're thankful that you did. So as we roll on a rendering plant, and all along, we're not trying to make this a giant rendering plant conversation. Lord knows, you and I have talked plenty about the rendering plant. We've talked about how bills become laws. And if anybody is not aware of you being out in front of this thing, then that they've been under a rock. So we won't belabor that. But the one thing I do want to talk about with, and I'm not going to ask you to list all the stuff you did in the rendering plant. I think it's pretty well documented. And I know you answered that question, and so folks can go and look and see. But one thing that I want to say, publicly, and this is not necessarily me or Advanced Etowah endorsing you as a candidate. We're not doing that. We're 501. We can't do that. But what I think I can share and say is I can endorse the attitude and say, whether someone likes your politics, agrees with you or not, I don't think there's any arguing that when you see something or you think something needs to be done, that you're willing to go the distance. Some people may not like some of the aggressiveness of some of what you do, and like that's fine. But I think I guess what kind of comes to my mind is it's pretty clear. You're not too wishy washy, and I think a great example of that is the bill that we did talk about, how a bill becomes a law, and the bill that you introduced and put forth down in Montgomery. Shoot, I guess that was a year ago
That
now.
was, yeah, over a year ago.
So, I heard about this filibuster that occurred down there, and I'd like to kind of learn a little bit more, because I don't think I've really talked to you about what your efforts were down there, and I don't want anybody to miss. I want to give you full credit for help everybody understand that is not a it's not necessarily a small thing. It's
Mhm.
not a usual thing. That's not a thing that happens every day. So tell me kind of what happened with that bill, and that fun day. I'm sure, as you executed
Right.
some as I understand it, some fairly varsity strategy, in trying to pull every string you could. So
Yeah, and to your point, Michael, I always try to use every option at my disposal. If I commit on something, and if I'm going to back something or be against something in this case, or I guess I was for the bill, which was against the rendering plan, that I'm going to do everything in my power to make it happen. That's just kind of who I am. I don't like to play games and just be for something but not really do anything. And so we had kind of um, been pushing the bill. We had a big rally. We had a lot of people there. The media were there, um, and I was having trouble getting the bill to the floor for consideration. So the first thing I did was objected to all local bills in the Senate, which that meant that nobody could have their local legislation considered by unanimous consent. It's called an uncontested local bill.
hmm,
And so did that, and finally that forced the situation of getting the bill to the floor. Um, but we ended up finally getting a vote on what's called the budget isolation resolution. I won't get into too much of this, but basically, before the budgets had been submitted to the governor for her signature, to take up any legislation requires a 3/5 vote of the body.
okay,
So brought the bill up, and the BIR vote failed. Didn't mean the bill was dead. It just meant that the bill couldn't be considered at that time. And so, really, this was my first ever filibuster in the Senate. Generally, I won't say always, but generally, the filibuster is a tool that the minority party uses against the majority to slow things down or to help get some of their priorities done, because that's the only tool that they in the minority have. So we do have a few in the majority that use it from time to time to get bills up for consideration, but it's not that entirely common, and it's definitely not common in my tenure for one to go on for 4 hours. I can't remember one single person doing one for that long. But what I felt like I had to do, I really kind of just dove in head first. I'm a freshman senator, kind of had watched and learned the rules. It was the first time I ever got to jump in and use them. Kind of dove in the deep end head first. So started a filibuster. We were able to get the bill back up and get the BIR passed. So then we go to vote on the bill, and the bill dies, right? But there's this little rule in the Senate rule book that you can reconsider a bill during that day, and I think up until the first hour of the next day during session. But you can reconsider, but you have to have somebody that voted on the winning side. So I had to find somebody who voted against the bill that was in the majority, right? That's how the bill was defeated. Get them to bring it back up. And meanwhile, I had worked the votes in the room, and we were able to get final passage of the bill. So several folks that had been there, we've had two colleagues in the Senate, one that is retiring at the end of this year, and another who's been in the Senate for a long time. Both of them around 40 years or so in the legislature have never seen a bill that had three separate considerations in one day. Once on the BR that failed, and again on the vote, and that failed, and then again for final passage. So um, it was a kind of a feat that they hadn't seen in the legislature. But to me, it was just using every tool in the toolbox, doing what I could for the local folks in my district to get the bill passed.
Well, again, I mean, I guess if you geek out on politics, that's a pretty good story, and I hope people appreciate that. You went the extra mile, and I hope people appreciate that. And again, like I said, if even if people don't agree with your politics or the things that you want to do, I think at least as we've seen, through this entire process this last year, we can have conversations, discussions, and disagree about things, and that's the way it's supposed to work. But hopefully on both sides of issues, you got people that are willing to work hard for what they believe in. And I don't think that alone tells me, I mean, you went out there and quite honestly kind of stuck your neck out, in that case. And I hope that people don't gloss that over, as we move past the rendering plant conversation, and some of those stories get, put at the bottom of the memories. So I just wanted to
Can I share a funny story?
Sure,
I don't know why I just thought of this while we were talking, and I don't know that I ever put this out there when we were having discussions about this, but when you speak on a bill, what we were doing the budgets that day, which was a good deal, a good day to be leveraging and holding things up, because the budgets have to get out and go to the House.
And I mean that there's a few people that weren't exactly all that happy about that, right?
One of my colleagues said the other day, it seems like we just reward bad behavior around here, and that's kind of what in the Senate. If you filibuster, you're kind of being a jerk a little bit. I mean, of course, they know that in fact, I think it actually helped my standing among my colleagues, because they knew that I understood the rules and knew how to use them, and knew how to work. But you have to be germane to So we were on the budgets, and so I just can't speak. I'm not one of these kind of people that I can just speak for 4 hours on nothing. I have to have something to go off of. So I got the Code of Alabama, the section on the education budget, and I was reading. I don't know if I've ever shared this story publicly, but while I was just reading from the thing, because that's all speaking to yourself is kind of a hard thing to do. And while I was in there, started talking about tax dollars being rendered back to, the wherever, to the finance office or whatever. And it just allowed me to kind of go off. You have to kind of be germane to what you're talking about. It kind of allowed me to go off on a tangent of rendering. There's an interesting word. There are a lot of different meanings for that. And so you got a few chuckles around the chamber. But just throw that story in.
Nice. All right. Well, we won't let you. We won't let you reenact the 4-hour filibuster. So, all right, guys. Well, let's move on. Again, if you got a question or two, then drop them in there, and we'll see about working that kind of stuff in. So we talked about the rendering plant. If you guys aren't aware, the foundational concepts that we've kind of thrown out there that are really pretty general and broad, because none of what we're doing with Advanced Etowah is trying to tell anybody how necessarily to suck the egg. We're just trying to narrow down what eggs we think are really important to focus on, if that makes any sense. So leadership is one of the very core foundational issues, and we talk about we need people that aren't just elected officials. We need people that are leaders. And that's really what we as voters should be looking at as we try to when we go to the polls. So one of the questions is kind of talk to me about what makes you feel like you're qualified to call yourself a leader and be a leader. Why should we follow or put you in a position of leadership to represent all of us?
Well, Michael, I think over the last 4 years, I've tried to do my best at all facets of the job, and I'll let me just explain what that is. So, having a local presence, being visible, being the face, of the legislature locally, whether that's going to events, going to speak at civic clubs, helping out with local needs. I have folks that call all the time that need help with, a Medicaid waiver for a disabled child, or they need help getting access to some service or those type of things. So, helping your local folks, being a local presence and local face, that's one part of the job. The other part of the job is actually legislating. And I think I've been a leader in putting together thoughtful legislation in Montgomery, learning the process, learning how to navigate all that, bringing tax dollars back from Montgomery back home for important projects. I should have brought the list with me on the amount of road projects, the funding that we've gotten over the last 3 years since the Rebuild Alabama Act. It's pretty staggering. And obviously, that's not just me. That's working with the other members of our delegation, working with the governor through the legislative process to help get that funding. So, working locally, working in Montgomery, and then also you're kind of you're partially a state official as well. So what's good for Etowah County is also good for Cherokee and DeKalb in the district, but also helps out other parts of the state. So you kind of wear a bunch of different hats. The local presence, local representation, bill passing, and budget wrangling in Montgomery. But leadership in general, I'll just say this: the one thing that I hear the most around these parts, I'll just put it that way, is that we need to have leaders who will just bring everybody together. We need to all sit down and hammer all this out and work all this out. Well, the rendering plant fight, to go back to the last thing, was an example of how that doesn't always work. And that's if there's a knock on Andrew Jones, it's, oh, he doesn't consult everybody. He doesn't do this sometimes, and that's perfectly true, because I'll just tell you, there's a time and a place to bring everybody together and work. There's some questions later coming about strategic plans and those kind of things. That's great. But there are also times when that people are trying to do something that's opposed to what your community wants, that's going to set it back, that's going to destroy parts of it. And that's when you got to say, I'm standing up and fighting. So leadership's not just, kumbaya. It's also knowing when enough's enough. And some folks are notorious about using talks, negotiations, strategizing, or whatever to buy time and get their way. So there's tactical use of that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
And a leader's got to be aware of when to be at the table and when to walk away. So I just mentioned that because I've heard that a lot.
You're not remotely referring to following the process.
Oh yeah, the broken process.
Yeah. So that's a good segue into the broken process as we roll into government structure and the very nature. We've talked over and over again. I've made the analogy of, as a military strategic planner, if I was trying to figure out how to conduct operations in Etowah County, and I put 12, 13, 14 generals, however you want to look at it, in this small of a geographic area, divided up like it is, we'd probably lose before we even got started. And so then we dive into some of the issues that got identified through the rendering plant. The airport authority, no requirement for any aviation experience, percentage wise, anything like that. The IDA, in terms of how we do industrial development, and certainly discussions about county level industrial development versus having this IDA as a private structure that really doesn't answer to the citizens. Those are just the examples that we've kind of personally been involved with. And as you look at just the way everything, some of these boards where you've got replication of people, and certainly there are some issues of, I know Craig Lipscomb brought up you know, sometimes it's hard to find people to genuinely fill the board. I mean, it's same thing as church, right? I mean, sometimes it's just hard to find the volunteers, and I get that. But holistically, as a government structure, as you look at Etowah County, and of course, you're looking at it from the lens of not just Etowah County, but a little bit bigger lens, and you're looking at it at a state level. What are your thoughts on the way things are structured? Um, the good, the bad, the ugly. Is it something? Is it workable? Is it something that needs to? Do you have any specific ideas of things that you might prefer? And I realize like you can't necessarily go in and change how the city council of Gadsden operates and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, what are your thoughts on kind of the general government structure that we have, as we move forward?
Well, I think I said this in my answer to the questionnaire, but I feel like a lack of leadership is more of the issue than the structure.
Okay.
Now, certainly there are some problems with the structure. We've seen in some boards and some other issues that we've had around the county that we need some more transparency. We need, agendas, meeting minutes, all those things posted online in advance, and we need, Facebook lives of meetings and stuff where the public, because people are not always able to attend, a 2 o'clock meeting during a workday.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have better access for the public to understand what's going on and to get involved. As far as serving on multiple boards, there definitely is a problem in Gadsden because you see that the airport authority folks, a lot of them are on the water board or on the IDA and back and forth, and it's just a mess. That's not to say that there's never a time for duplication. I think it's all right for some folks to serve and wear different hats, but I don't think in any case is it right for somebody to be on two compensated boards. I'll just go ahead and say that.
Okay.
If it's a compensated board, if they're compensated per meeting, then one should be enough.
Okay.
So, I think we just have to do some more to just bring government into the 21st century here in Etowah County. Whether that's making things available to the public, letting people know what's going on. That's part of it. And obviously, the next mayor and council in Gadsden have a lot of work ahead of them to fix that. The county at large, I feel like, is in somewhat better place, but there are numerous boards and stuff that you and I sit and you probably don't know anything about that are out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's part of it too.
Much more me than you, I'm sure. But I'm learning new things every day. But that's the hope. As we kind of ask that as a broad based question is, there's a ton of stuff that we don't know and understand that we as Advanced Etowah, I mean, we've learned a lot more over the last years. We've kind of dug in. I'd say we've, for example, I know more about open meetings laws than I ever thought I would. So there's a ton of that, and I hope that each candidate, wherever you're running for, that we're looking at that. I personally, I feel like now is a great time after the rendering plant and kind of what is going on right now is a great time for us to kind of look and assess all of that. I know. When we talk about equal representation on all these boards, I know obviously there's the minority community that has they've been beaten. I was just at a debate last night with Kellen Parker and Jeffrey Washington over that county commission District 5 seat, and lots of discussion and frustration about the equal representation on the boards, and I from just a race standpoint. I don't want to get into a big, race conversation, but I look at that and I hear the equal representation across the board in the community. And what I really can narrow down myself on is that airport authority. because that's a world that I know coming from aviation and understanding that. And I look at that and I assume that there's a similar issues on boards that I don't even know about, or certainly topics and boards that I don't understand. So if you have zero requirement for even a single member of your board to have aviation background, that just doesn't make sense to me. So I asked the question: Are there other entities out there that are in the same similar thing? And now seems to me like a great time for all of us to kind of ask that question as we move forward. And again, I know when we get into some of that stuff, there's very limited stuff that you can do as you look at it going from the state level, from Montgomery.
Well, sometimes there are, and there's a board, and maybe we'll have a conversation in the future about the sports complex issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just say, there was a board that we legislatively made some changes to. There were no staggered terms for the board, for example. The board members could themselves choose to add more members to the board, and it just kept, growing exponentially. Um, Folks were not seeing meeting minutes and agendas posted and those type of things. So we kind of put all that. I made a point in drafting the legislation to put some of that stuff in there, particularly that within, I think it's 2 weeks of the meeting, that the minutes had to be posted either on a website or on a social media website. Just those kind of things, and kind of encouraging that. And I'm not picking on just that board.
Right.
There are probably others that need to do that as well too.
Well, and we'll finish off this conversation because I think not to be too softball with you and agree with everything, but I do hope that folks understand, and I'm not suggesting that just because we ask questions that every board is evil. There may be boards that we look at and go, hey, that's absolutely 100% spot on. It's structured the way it is. It has the people on it that it should have. But we kind of got to get out of this, and I don't want to get into the whole mega sports, complex. But that's a good example of just this overreaction when somebody asks a question of what's going on. Can I understand this? And people take offense to that. Now, I'm not suggesting as we look at all these boards, and just all the structure. It's not a question of like, oh, is it bad? Like, when was the last time anybody asked, is this the right way that needs to be set up to move forward? And I'll leave it at that. It's not a bad thing to go and do some self-assessment and figure out what's working, what's not working, in my opinion. So, all right, let's move on to infrastructure. Because you just talked about roads, and the infrastructure. Obviously, that was a very core piece of the rendering discussion. Dealing with the SSOs, and as always, I'll take this opportunity. If you do see sewage overflows, reach out to Coosa River Keepers. They still want to know and keep track of that stuff. There is still a lawsuit for violation of the Clean Water Act that is still in place. So when we talk about infrastructure and adding hundreds of thousands, 600,000 gallons of additional, that was a big discussion with the rendering plant. The airport infrastructure, road infrastructure, all that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on where we sit infrastructure wise currently, and where we need to go as a community for future success?
Well, we've had a lot of good progress, but we have a lot more ground to cover. I'll put it that way. Let me take it piece by piece. Roads and bridges. When I campaigned for this office in 2018, I highlighted 3 priorities: the widening of US 411 in the north end of Etowah, going into Cherokee County, the Southside Bridge, and 759. We've got the 411 project. That was one of the first 2 Rebuild Alabama projects that the governor announced following the passage of the Rebuild Alabama Act.
Okay.
That's a great project because a lot of people are going back and forth between, that way to Georgia or KTH in Leesburg to work. Folks are coming into Gadsden, Etowah County to work. That's a vital corridor that we needed. So that project should be hopefully within the next year or so. He will be driving on that. That's going to be big. Um, the Southside Bridge, we've had a few bites at the apple on that. Worked with Representative Lipscomb. We were able to get some engineering money for the Southside Bridge. Um, Congressman Adderholt's office was involved with that. We were a finalist for a federal grant, which would have paid for, I believe, half of the cost of that bridge. We didn't make it, but we're getting closer.
Okay.
So we're making progress. And Mayor Snyder in Southside has been a big leader and proponent, of course, because that's probably the number one infrastructure project for the folks in Southside. 759, we've got engineering money on that. I think that was $2 million, $1 or $2 million for the engineering for 759, what we're now calling the Eastern Connector. That will be great for downtown Gadsden. It will get that truck traffic out and redirect it down to 278 and 431 there. That will do a lot to grow, because you're removing congestion, you're helping business and commerce. So road projects, those are probably three of the biggest. And we've had a number of other projects as well. US 411, all the way from the Dollar General in North Gadsden, all the way through to Rainbow City has been resurfaced now. Other little projects all over the county. And we're very proud, I'm very proud that we're able to bring that money from Montgomery, our tax dollars, back home and put them to work for us. So that's roads and bridges. Let me talk about broadband. We passed historic broadband legislation in the state. Believe it or not, there's still pockets of Etowah County where it's hard or almost impossible for people to get broadband internet coverage. The pandemic really brought that to the forefront. People not being able to work from home properly,
Right.
Kids not being able to do assignments. And so Alabama was better positioned than almost anybody else in the country because we had already set up legislatively an entity and a program to do broadband grant funding. And I won't get too much in the weeds on this, but let me just say, when you're going and trying to lay a mile of fiber optic cable and there are only 3 houses down that mile, it doesn't make economic sense for
Right.
the company to put that cable out there. They're not making money, they're losing money. So by subsidizing some of the cost and getting them to a point where they can at least, break even or make a little bit of profit to service that area, then that's the direction we need to go. From what I've been told by people in the know, fiber optic cable is quote unquote future proof, meaning that, beams are traveling at the speed of light through that cable.
Okay.
They're not going to come out with anything better than that unless it's maybe some kind of satellite operation or, something like that.
Right.
So investing these dollars, getting broadband internet where it needs to go is key to our infrastructure. That's part of it as well. Water and sewer. The ARPA, the federal money that came down from the Biden administration, we passed historic grant funding for water and sewer. And, these kind of things, the broadband internet, the water and sewer are generational investments.
Right.
Things that we can pour this money in and we know that our kids and grandkids are going to be seeing dividends in the future from these things. They're not kind of one-time throwaway pet projects. These are kind of...
And I think, along that lines, I think it's fair to point out that, this is a problem across the country with infrastructure. And you got some stuff that goes back to the New Deal, that we've relied on, as we talk about bridges and all that kind of stuff throughout the country. And so it's not something that, people sitting in positions right now, it's not necessarily their fault. It's not all pinned on them. It's something that it seems like all of us collectively as a community, really kind of as a state and as a nation going, we probably need to do something about some of this stuff. So I just don't want to come across as I'm trying to throw, like the folks that are, in the engineering department for a city under the bus right now, like
right.
that they've been thrown a problem and, there's only so much they can do. So, but it's good to hear that we're investing the money, and I think that just goes to these are generational things that we've got to consider.
We do, and anything to bring business to would be the final part of any
Yep.
infrastructure, such as the airport, and there are airport grants and things like that that the state has made available. So we want to invest in these key things because that's the backbone of everything else, right?
Yeah.
So get our adequate infrastructure in for for all these things: water, sewer, broadband, roads and bridges, and places like the airport. Then that's gonna you know, we can build on that.
Well, so speaking of that, can you touch on, because you do have that state level perspective. Obviously the mega site is a big deal. That is definitely something that we've at this point we've got to figure out as a community how to make that work and attract folks in to fill that spot and build jobs. What's kind of your understanding? I know that the governor, they just passed some direction on rail and all that kind of stuff. What's kind of your understanding of what's going on out there, from the state level?
Well, we've had a lot of success at the mega site. We've gotten investments through the Growing Alabama tax credit twice. I want to say those were around $3 million each. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I think it's a total of around $6 million. And what that is allows, in this case, is Norfolk Southern to invest some of their tax liability into bettering the property. And the reason that's important is because this mega site's 1,100 acres. It's on rail. It's on Interstate 59. It's strategically located. We're close enough to Birmingham, Chattanooga, Huntsville, Atlanta. We're kind of right in that little central hub.
It's also right across the street from a fairly capable airport.
That's right, close to the airport. So it's got a lot of potential. We just need to keep investing in it. And I want to mention this little story because this illustrates the importance of the legislative process and little things that are done behind the scenes. So we were, the Growing Alabama tax credit legislation was up for renewal. And Marilyn Lott, who was over the mega site, who's now retired, came to me and said, they're tweaking this law. Can we get something in there that mega sites are going to get first priority? Because that was the original intent of the bill. I said, let me work on it. So I was able to work with then Representative Bill Poole, who's now the finance director in the governor's office. And we were able to put a sentence or two in there which said, mega sites over 1,000 acres get first priority. Well, without that, if there had been multiple applications for these tax credits to go to properties, some little 50-acre place, in South Alabama or somewhere else might have gotten the investment instead of us. So that's just to say, legislation is not all about passing a big major bill or doing this thing. Sometimes it's a game of inches.
Right.
And just having a sentence or two in a bill to help steer the money back home where it needs to go is key. So I give Marilyn a lot of credit for bringing that to my attention and letting me have the opportunity to work on that behind the scenes. Because now Norfolk has come in, they've put a rail spur, they've done a crossing, they have got the pad ready out there. So the pump has been primed. When something hits out there, I think it has the potential to be big. And it galls me to no end that they were looking at originally putting the rendering plant out there, on a 1,100 acre site, which is for something big, not for something like that.
Yeah.
So I know that's coming back full circle with that again. But I'll just say, this has the potential to be a place for a major employer, not 50, 60 jobs. And that's why I'm going to do everything I can to invest in it. I know I'm getting too long here, but one more thing. When we passed a bill for the county, the county asked us to do some late fee legislation on property taxes. They wanted to say, you have until December 31st to pay your taxes. What was happening is after that, these properties were getting ready to go all the way up to auction, and then people would pay their bill. So the county was having to spend the money to advertise these tax sales, to go through the process, notify people, legal notices in the paper, spend a lot of money. They came to us and asked us, can you give us the power to impose a late fee? And I said, yes, but I want a portion of that money to go to the mega site. So we were able to take part of that. Part of that goes to roads and bridges for the county. Part of that goes to the mega site, and some of that goes for administrative overhead. But I think it's around 43% of it goes to the mega site. So just trying to find ways to cobble little pieces of stuff together to get funding. So
well, fortunately, their whatever process they followed, they seem to come to the conclusion that the mega site was not a good spot. But yes, we'll move on from. We won't go back down the rabbit hole of the rendering plant.
Yeah, there you go.
So in this one, we may have kind of dug in, but infrastructure and all that kind of stuff is very much square in the life you live as a state senator, and going down to Montgomery and getting that's what you do. So I think this is a fairly quick one to talk about first responders. You're limited at the state level with what you can do. Obviously that is not a core issue that was necessarily directly related to the rendering plant, other than some of the discussions about that the city of Gadsden is having to regularly close the airport firehouse out in that area, which would have been the one to deal with any issues in that area because of the retention issues. And again, same with the infrastructure. This is not an uncommon theme uncommon thing to see across the country. Trouble recruiting and retaining law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics. So what are your thoughts on that? Obviously you're going to say that you're appreciative of first responders. I don't know a single politician that would, well, at least not in the state of Alabama, that would stand up and say otherwise. But the piece of that to attracting business and your viewpoint of how does that kind of relate to, how do we develop and move and progress as a community with those issues with first responders?
Well, I think pay and benefits is obviously part of the equation, but equal to that, they've got to be invested. This is the city of Gadsden in particular has got to be a place where they want to live and work and raise a family. And I think we can all agree that there are parts of it that, yes, I'd love to live there and work and raise a family, but there are other parts and other dynamics that need to be strengthened and improved to make this a place where people want to come and live and work. So quality of life is essential to all that. Now, on the pay and benefit side, we as a legislature have done a lot over recent years, whether it's, hazardous duty kind of, years worked to compensate for, the difference in a first responder's profession rather than, someone in education or someone in another safe line of work.
Right.
So that's part of it. We had a bill this year for volunteer firefighters, for example, to get a tax credit because they're spending their own gas money. They're doing taking their own time to go and respond to calls or whatever. I had a bill on, we weren't able to get it passed actually, but that representative, one of the representatives in the House had brought to me, Representative Joe Lovern, who himself, I believe, a former retired firefighter, that allows members to purchase some of their retirement time so that they can work less years. And that bill should be coming back next session, and I expect that we'll be able to work it out and get it passed because it's been in the works for a while. I just got involved with it kind of late this year. But doing those kind of things to make things better, on the pay and benefit side is where I can help. And obviously, doing what I can in Montgomery to help the quality of life here. But we're going to have some leadership, particularly in the city of Gadsden, to just help continue. And there's been a lot of progress made. I mean,
Yeah,
look at
yeah.
what's going on with downtown Gadsden, for example. There are numerous other examples I could point to where we've made some progress, but continue fostering and developing Gadsden, Etowah County into a place where people want to live and work is going to help retain those people. And, I'll make a plug. Giving them 2% more of their pay to take home would be a great way to get them to work in the city of Gadsden as well. And that's why I'm big on repealing the occupational tax.
All right. Mayor Taylor jumping in as a speaking of firefighters. Um, let's see here. Let's get this up. Um, so health bills for firefighters was critical to long-term quality of life. Thankful that went through the legislature, and Senate has been close friends to first responders. So
Thank you, Mayor.
that's um, yeah. I've said it before. As a military guy, as a Navy guy, it's kind of cliche to say, oh, your military guys, your first responders need more pay. Um, you know, I, it's I think in some areas around here, that's a no. That's not a cliche. That's a cold hard truth. And I know multiple conversations about it's not just about the pay, because there's nothing that's going to happen in the first responder world or the military that makes it where you're going to achieve top 1% economic success, working a career in those fields. Nobody gets into it for the money. But they should be able to provide for their family, have a decent quality life, particularly given the risk that they put themselves in. And I think we just need to not lose the perspective of how core a foundational principle of a good first responder, again, from paramedics, firefighters, and law enforcement. It's absolutely critical to the stability of a community. And I don't know. I'm glad I live in an era where I can pick up my phone and call when the worst happens, and have somebody come help, because that's just not always been the case. And unfortunately, we're in this area, that's becoming more and more of a threat. That may not necessarily always be the case. So let's move on to we'll jump on to education as another one of those that was not necessarily directly related in the rendering plan as a real core discussion, but certainly as we talk through the concepts of what are things that recruit industry, education, then becomes a very core principle, whether it's workforce development or having an education system that companies want to bring their own kids to, or are willing to have their employees move into an area, because contrary to what some might think, there are a lot of good businesses out there that actually care about their employees and the people that work for them, and want to give them the quality of life that's how they help retain them. So what are your thoughts on the current education dynamic that we have here in Etowah County and the region, as you look at it from, again, coming from that economic development standpoint?
Well, I think we have a good educational system compared to many other parts of the state. But, it's often said in Montgomery, we may be one of the best, but we're one of the best of one of the worst, if I can say it that way. And I don't mean to say that flippantly, because, we've made a lot of progress as a state, but we've got a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama has been ranked 50th in math. Our education at times is even behind. We were 51, or we were behind DC and Puerto Rico. So we have a lot of work as a state to do, and the solutions that we need for the state are going to help us here locally. Again, I think we're one of the we have some of the better schools in the state, but we need to make sure that we're making improvements. the state has passed in recent years. This year we passed a numeracy bill, which is to help with math, to help make sure those fundamentals are taught and to train teachers better on how to implement that learning into the classroom. The Literacy Act, of course, we passed to make sure that everybody is reading on level by the third grade, which is a key metric for graduation. We've done more for teacher pay and teacher benefits to recruit more people to the teaching profession. Adjusted the salary matrix through a study that was done on compensation. So we're making strides. So I'd say locally, the solution is going to be similar to what the solution is for the state as a whole. But when it comes to, getting people into the workforce, obviously the governor's plan to have an additional 500,000 trained workers by 2025, that's going to be key. We're on track to meet that. Making sure that everyone graduates. If they're not going to college to get a degree, that they have a credential of some sort, that they're certified in plumbing or welding or electrical or whatever. So everyone should graduate eventually with either a degree or a credential. Is one goal. And so obviously the folks at Gadsden State are doing yeoman's work in training people and doing career tech. Alan Smith, the Dean of Workforce Development there, is doing a good job. Our local career tech centers are doing good. What I think needs to happen is we need to have some more cooperation. Gadsden City has its own career tech center. Etowah and Etowah are in together. If we could find a way to have more cooperation between the systems, maybe we could have more opportunities.
Okay.
So if they're offering auto mechanics in both places, for example,
right?
Maybe through cooperating, then we can have an auto mechanics and something else over here. Bass boat repair, or just I don't know. I'm just throwing things out, but those kind of
So you're talking about maximizing the resources. If you've got two things, you're paying some duplication of effort. There is kind of what you're getting at.
That's right. Kind of getting some benefit out of that, and then in return, better integrating into the community college system. I think long term is what I would like to see. Creating that workforce pipeline is kind of the whole, if we build it, they will come kind of thing. If we're pumping out graduates in IT, for example, then an IT company that's looking for a place to locate, well, they're putting out 100 graduates a year in IT, and they have nowhere to go except Birmingham or whatever. I'm going to go to Gadsden or somewhere in Etowah County and locate.
Right.
So kind of planning and thinking about what we want to recruit here, and then getting the graduates primed for that field is key. And I think we can do more of that by integrating some of our high school career tech more into the community college system, where people are graduating high school, they're already on their way to a credential. If not, they completed the work for a credential.
Gotcha. All right. Good. Tons of good discussion on the education system, and as I've had these conversations, I think we got a lot of folks that are, a lot of it headed in the right direction. And a lot of good thoughts, maybe some differences, opinions on how to go about doing it. But again, as a citizen, as a voter who, I honestly had not, I just hadn't thought all that much about, the education and that correlation to business development. Maybe I should have been an industrial development expert as a soccer dad, but I wasn't. So now I'm glad to learn and understand a little bit more of the dynamics at play. It's not just about I want my kids to get a better education. There's a lot bigger picture and a lot more to it.
Let me add one more thing. Yeah. Facilities too are important, right? For people, if you're looking to move somewhere, you want to know about the schools, and they could have the best teachers in the world, But if you go to the facilities and they're crumbling,
Yep.
you're not going to send your kid there. You're not going to come move here. So investing in facilities, you know, I think that's more. There's been some work done on that, but there are a few elementary schools, for example, in the city of Gadsden that need a refresh. They, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, uh, by and large, I've been to most of the facilities in the county system in Etowah, and they're doing really. The legislature passed a bond issue to allow folks to make some capital investments. So, kind of continuing to have a facelift, I think, is never a bad idea either.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, so well, I mean that all it all ties into, as you mentioned, the if you build it they will come, and figuring out what you want. Well, that starts to perfectly segue into the discussion about a master plan. And while we've got places like Rainbow City and Southside that are working on city plans, um, you know, I personally, I'm going to make the argument that until we can really figure out how to, create a countywide master plan, and I don't know, I mean, lots of different good ideas and maybe it doesn't look like it's an actual document master plan, but at least some concerted effort of coordinated planning to what we want to be as an entire county. I think until we really do that, it's going to be a lot harder, if not impossible, to really move, to move much further as a county. So, what are your thoughts on that countywide plan, and maybe even with where you sit in representing more than one county, a regional wide coordinated effort. So safety in numbers,
Yeah.
I guess. So what are your thoughts on that? How do we go about doing that?
Well, we've got to have everybody at the table and sit down and think this through. And particularly if it's, the cities, I know many of them have the municipalities have individual master plans, kind of looking at the county wide level and our workforce. I mentioned the workforce pipeline, those type of things are important. But it's also important for infrastructure projects. So on 759, the way to get that project to the front of the line is by us sitting down with all the stakeholders, the county, the cities, the chamber, other regional, maybe folks outside of the county, like Piedmont and other places that are going to get traffic that's coming, being routed through Gadsden, uh, and figuring out a way to come up with a local match. If we were able to come up with a percentage of that project, uh, the dollars for that project as a local match, we could move that to the front of the line.
Hmm.
That's what Huntsville has been so successful in getting their projects, because they are able to go to the Department of Transportation and say, okay, we'd like this project, we're willing to pay for 20% of it. Now, there's no telling. I haven't seen the latest estimates on what 759 would cost, but I'll tell you that just the 5 miles of US 411, the widening there was, I believe, 42 million. So it's no small feat,
Right.
to get a local match, even a 10% match. But bringing everybody to the table, getting that master plan, um, figuring out ways we can pull resources is key, and I'm certainly willing to help do
Gotcha.
that.
And I mean, so that 759, um, while that extension is square in the middle of Gadsden, right now, that's clearly not just a Gadsden problem, or a Gadsden issue, and that
Right.
we've got to have the coordinated effort, as a county, or all the municipalities sitting there going, okay, well, how does this benefit all of us collectively? So again, maybe that's a we don't have some big thick 180 page master plan. Maybe we start with one or two things and move from there.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely I can't beat the drum enough. If we don't, um, hear it. Why would folks from Rainbow City say anything to the people in the city of Gadsden? Why would the people of Etowah listen to what the people of Southside have to say? And vice versa. That is one of the most ridiculous concepts and ideas that I have heard as a transplant and as a citizen here in the community. And until that mindset is extinguished, I think that we're very limited in what we can do, and that's all part of how do we develop that master plan and how do we work together. It's just I just that's so small minded, unless of course each of the municipalities wants to remain as they completely are, and nobody wants any growth of any kind. Which, hey, you know what? That's the beauty of our system. Everybody has their right to their opinions, and they can vote for the folks that they want to vote for. That's the beauty of democracy. But if you want to sit there and say we need to have economic development, attract businesses, grow more jobs, then that mentality's got to. I mean, it's just got to go away. So I won't make you agree or disagree with that. But so let's wrap all that stuff up with the business environment that we have here in Etowah County. What are your thoughts on? I guess I'll couch it this way. What are kind of your thoughts? What are the things that you think have kind of held Etowah County back? And I say that from the metric of looking at many of our surrounding communities that are prospering. I don't think there's much of an argument that there's communities that are prospering more than we are. What are your thoughts on the business environment? How do we, what do we need to do to get more people, to number one, the existing businesses to grow and expand, the people that have ideas or want to build businesses to do that are citizens already, and then of course attracting in more stuff, more businesses, all that kind. What's kind of your thought on all that stuff?
Well, that's a big question. There's a lot I could unpack there.
Yes, we could probably spend hours
Right.
talking about it. So what's some priorities, I guess?
I think quality of life and continuing to grow and better, particularly the hub, Gadsden, right? So the population of Etowah County has largely remained the same for decades, but it's gone out of Gadsden into the county, right? So the county as a whole, the whole population has stayed the same, but it's migrated from the city to the county. We've got to figure out how to continue revitalizing, growing, refreshing, whatever word you want to use,
Right.
the city of Gadsden. We need to think of ways to recruit industry. I talked about the workforce pipeline earlier. I know the chamber has done a lot of work talking on a job incubator
Mm-hmm.
for kind of small business incubator. That will help. Personally, I believe the occupational tax is a huge deterrent to people wanting to locate in Etowah County when they could locate somewhere else and their employees get 2% more. So I've made it one of my priorities to find a way to phase that out. I think that will help with recruiting businesses here and keeping employers here. You know, folks are not going to work. The folks are not going to want to work somewhere where they're losing an extra 2% of their income. I don't think I wouldn't. You know, if all things were equal, I would. Probably drive 10 minutes out of the way to go get a paycheck somewhere else. All things being equal. Um, so that's part of it. Um, the schools, we talked about the schools and making sure that we continue to have good facilities. Believe it or not, we had a study, we have a commission that we have in the state of Alabama, Innovate Alabama, and Dr. Condoleezza Rice, the former Secretary of State, sits
Mm-hmm.
on that. One of the top takeaways that they had in their report that families are looking for is outdoor recreation, outdoor opportunities, um, whether it be hiking and biking trails or outdoor, sporting activities, those kind of things. We've had a lot of progress on those fronts. Obviously, we've got the Coosa River, Neely Henry, Weiss Lake over in Cherokee County. We've we've got hiking trails, down behind the falls. We've got the falls and other
Mm-hmm.
tourism draws. So we've got a lot of good things going. We just need to figure out a way to further leverage those, along with the other list of things that I mentioned,
Right.
and that's going to get folks wanting to come and live and work here.
All right. Well, I think we've definitely we've been going long enough, and I appreciate you coming in and talking with me. I know you don't have a ton of spare time, and I'm sure you're glad to be away from Montgomery for just a little bit at least. Um, and I appreciate. I've joked with all of you guys that go spend time in Montgomery. Not only thank you for being willing to be a servant of the community and be a politician, but an extra thank you that you're willing and able to go deal with what I'm sure is a marvelous environment in Montgomery and the politics of the state. I say that tongue in cheek. I know there's good people down there. We're a good state of good people, but as I'm learning in the world of politics, any of it's just there's definitely an aspect that's not all that fun. So I hope people are appreciative of guys like you and the others that are willing to take that extra effort and go spend a bunch of time down in Montgomery. So.
Thank you.
Thank you again for what you've done with with working through the rendering plant. It's been an odd almost 2 years now, year and a half. Interesting times in Etowah County. I hope and I think you echo the sentiment of hopefulness and optimism of what's going on in our community and the future and the potential that we have and the community that we can build and the direction we can go in. So, where can folks find out more about you or get in touch with you if they've got more detailed questions or anything like that they want to ask you?
I'll give you a number of ways. I've got a website. It's andrewandyou.com. I know that's on the Advanced Etowah page. Facebook.com/Andrew for Alabama. I have a lot of folks that will chime in there or message me there. My office number is 334-261-0857. And let me say that if you, going back to the website, if you go to the website, andrewandyou.com, you'll see a link to sign up for a newsletter. I put out a newsletter usually every 2 months or so with updates on what all has been going on, where I've been, what I've been doing, legislation out of Montgomery, those kind of things. So those are all some good ways to get plugged in.
Okay. Well, again, guys, like he said, you can head to advancedetowah.com, go to election 22. We've got more and more of the candidate information, getting some good feedback from folks, a few little tweaks and things we're adding that people have asked about. So hope you guys are finding that a valuable tool. And I will make a plug. Primary May 24th. Everybody that is going to be on the ballot there, that is the election. Basically for all of those guys. So don't miss. If you miss the May 24th primary, you're basically not going to get to vote on your state representatives and your county commission and sheriffs and state school board. I'm probably missing another one, but the point is May 24th. Put it on the calendar. I know everybody gets super excited about getting out and voting, but it is really a big deal this time around. So I think this is one of the most certainly up there in the top 3 to 5 of the most important election cycles that this county has seen. So that's just my take on it. So guys, thank you for joining us. Again, reach out, make comments, shoot me any questions. And we want to know what you think. I can't say it enough. The true leadership in this community comes from us as voters. If we don't take the time to get a little bit educated and spend the time getting to know how these guys think and what they're doing and communicate our desires, then we can only fault them so much. So the ultimate leadership has to come from us as citizens and communicating our desires of what we want to be as a community. So thank you guys. Y'all have a great afternoon. Hopefully we'll have some beautiful weather here in the next few days. Again, Andrew, thank you so much for coming in, and looking forward to seeing you down the road. And guys, I will talk to you on the next one. Thanks, guys.